Evolution in Divine Love is an invitation to reimagine everything from the place where it all begins and where it all returns. Love.
Welcome to the Evolution in Divine Love podcast. As we arrive at the final episode of this podcast discussing the conclusion, we find ourselves not at an ending, but at a threshold. Across these conversations, we've traced a movement, how existence is not static, but a dynamic unfolding. So how love is not simply an ornament, but it is the engine of very substance. How matter, consciousness, and personhood all flow from the divine that is endlessly relational. So today's episode is an invitation to gather these threads into a single tapestry, seeing how the parts illuminate the whole. We'll revisit a few of the major movements in evolution and divine love, and then expand on its frame. So we'll ask, what does this vision open? What becomes possible when we begin to see ourselves, our relationships, and the world through this lens? And where does the evolutionary movement of love ask us to go next? For me personally, each of your books, Maharaj, is a pilgrimage. I am not the same person after the last chapter as I was beginning the first. And not only that, but I also experience that although your books weren't pre-planned as a series, like a boxed set, so to say, nonetheless, each one expands my own capacity to receive the next. So if you had to describe the overall movement of evolution and divine love in one arc, from the beginning to the end, what's the transformation that you see it holds or invites in the reader?
Wow. Well, thank you first for your words of appreciation and for not only describing but experiencing the reading of my books as a pilgrimage. It is a pilgrimage in the sense that, at least for me, that I cannot write about anything that I'm not going through in my walking in life. So the walking is hopefully a pilgrimage. So somehow the books are bearing witness to life walking. So yeah, naturally they become hopefully another step into the journey. And as you say, I was not planned, and I don't write anything planned. Like, okay, now comes the third part of the trilogy, or this and this and that. But naturally, without trying to force anything, at least in my experience, also one book takes to the other, because again, it's a step into the pilgrimage. So you make one step to step into the next step, and naturally one is giving support to the other and even helping to reflect back on the previous ones in a certain context. So in connection to your question regarding the last book, Evolution and Divine Love, and of course I've written the book. There's the pre-publishing of the book, there's those post-publishing, in the sense that you write the book, you publish the book. In my case, I then travel and tour, basically, like book tour, and I speak on the book, as I've been doing for the last maybe half a year almost. Now, as we are recording this episode, I'm in New Zealand, and I'm basically, as we are officially, quote unquote, concluding our series of episodes, quote unquote, concluding, I'm officially, quote unquote, concluding the book tour for Evolution and Divine Love, and again, speaking for half a year about the contents of the book and different sections. The book continues to write itself, so to say. New things start to come. So, and yeah, I don't think there is any better way to honor the theme of the book in that sense. I don't feel like I can put a final seal on the book, and this what the book is about, and I've got there concluded next book, and that's probably what naturally drives me as an author to, okay, next, another book needs to be written to to continue playing out the implications of the previous one and playing out the implications of the previous one or the next one. So it becomes like a hopefully an organic flow, trying to make sense of one drop from an infinite ocean, basically. All this is, as I always like to say, it's all the books I've written, and hopefully all the books, if I continue to write any books, hopefully there will continue to be about this quote unquote one and only theme, which is love. And I've been somehow sprinkled by one drop, a few drops of that bottomless ocean, and that one single drop is enough to try to ruminate on that for eternity. So that's what I'm trying to do. I find myself, in a very different place. When I started conceiving the idea of the book, which I mentioned the other day, actually was in one sense here, where I'm now recording this episode in New Zealand. I had this thunderbolt moment that I mentioned, referred to in the introduction of the book. So I was someone back then throughout the writing process, of course, we are reading ourselves, book published, book sharing of the book, exploring further, sharing with others, receiving the back and forth and the insights from kindred spirits. So again, the book takes its own life, its own shape, its own meaning in time. It's ever evolving. So that's what I can say now.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I really appreciate how you bring out how the process itself is evolutionary. You know, writing the process and the book itself is evolutionary. So looking back at some of the sections that we've explored over the past 24 weeks, are there shifts in perspective that you feel are the most foundational, like those without which the rest of the conversation wouldn't be able to stand?
Yeah, they are. I've tried to highlight them in the key paradigm shifts section at the end of each chapter, and somehow again trying to summarize that summary, because the key paradigm shifts somehow are a summary of each chapter, and at the conclusion section of the book there is another key paradigm shift list summarizing the 4 key paradigm shift lists at the end of each chapter. I won't go through each one of them now, but basically what comes to my mind immediately, some of the main posts that had been pounded, and without which there will be basically no book and no meaning to what we are writing about this. Of course, first of all, as obvious as it may sound, the notion that love is ever evolving, that love is a moving, dancing reality that invites for a similar movement and dancing and celebration of life. That in that movement, love is its own necessity. Like love not only is the ultimate necessity, what we most cherish and need in the core of our being, but love creates its own necessity in the form of further love. That's just one line, but it has so many implications. And I'm thinking in this case as a Gaudiya Vaishnava beyond that as well, but I cannot avoid thinking as a Gaudiya Vaishnava in connection to forms like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Gaur Lila, which we have been exploring recently in our pilgrimage to India. So love creates its own necessity. Love carves God. God is a byproduct of love, the sweet absolute. As we were reading one line yesterday, God becomes what love requires. So there are necessities that come out of love, and love is full. So fullness brings its own set of necessities, and God evolves despite his changelessness. At the same time, evolves to tend to the necessities of love, and by extension, we are invited to do the same. So we as souls receive this, ever expanding prospect, which is very exciting. Also, again, to sober the conversation, of course, the points that an ever evolving prospect may be unsettling, may sound too unpredictable, and we may need to be grounded in some certainties of love. And that's why probably unconsciously I'm writing my next book will be about how we are all unconditionally loved. So to have a really powerful grounding in something that is really certain, so we can deal with everything else being uncertain, the unpredictability of the dance of love, so we can balance those poles. Yeah, how the soul's prospect is amazing, is brilliant, and we are invited to see our practice as ever evolving, and therefore not so much becoming goal obsessed, but presence oriented, and finding some contentment in the fact that we are doing what we want to do for eternity, and therefore through our daily life and practice we can have glimpses of eternity. That's very important. And of course, in my mind, I'm going chronologically through each one of the chapters: love, God, soul, and matter, of course, which is also for me a very important post to pound as many times that it's required in terms of reclaiming, let's say, our sacred connection with matter, acknowledging we have a relationship with everything, matter included. We are all interrelated, and therefore we are all brothers and sisters in the same family. Matter is not outside of the lineage, so to say. It's part of the family. There's only one family, and material energy is sacred, is moving, is alive, is imbued with the divine presence. The cosmos, the creation is an outpouring of love. So that kind of brings back to the full circle of the reality of love. So love, God, soul, matter, and matter pointing back to love, and everything pointing back to everything in a way that is always moving ahead. That's what's coming. And now, of course, if I will start to think in detail, so many other things come, but I think those are some of the main building blocks for this work, or for this proposal of reality in perpetual evolution.
So basically everything you've written in the book.
Yeah. If not, I wouldn't have included that in the book.
Makes perfect sense.
I try to include whatever I feel it's important, right? If I don't feel it's important, then that's out of the book.
Yeah, I'm sure like you've even condensed, like compared to what you wanted to include. Yeah, like I'm thinking one of the evolutionary process that I have gone through in this journey of reading the book. And also
I'd like to ask you. I'd like to ask both of you what's your own journey, and which are your main building blocks from the work that you've held, of course.
Well, I mean, so many things, but like one thing I'm thinking of now is that like for me, and also like seeing some others like, who have been reading and like, going along, following the podcast and all of that. One common thing is that we've been talking a lot about love, unconditional love, which we haven't done before. So like, since this book, we've talked a lot about it, like, asked questions and all of that. And that to me itself is like a big shift. And it seems like now we are seeking that unconditional love, like a lot more than before. Like with radical personalism, you were talking about how we are loved unconditionally. by God. I mean, you still do that, but there's a lot more to it now, and so many questions and all of that. So now that we are in the process of seeking that, it feels like, even though you say that, it's surpassing like, all the limitations, and it's available freely to like, give and receive, somehow it feels like it's the hardest thing to find, and it's like we're all looking for it, but it's somehow just so hard to find, hard to find somebody giving, and also hard to give it ourselves. So like, as we are, going through this journey, how can we be like, patient and like gracefully seek it?
Hmm. Well, I appreciate that, first of all, that you appreciated the fact that we were throughout this series, these episodes of podcast, that, to be honest, these meetings have been one of the main sacred triggers, so to say, to bring out more and more of the content of the book, for me to enter into the arena, to play out more of what I've written about in sacred conversation and exchange. So great, the gratitude to both of you for that, and to all the audience as well. And I appreciate the fact that you appreciate that, oh, we have been talking about love so much all the year, no? All this year. Of course, that what better thing can we do, right? I remember this poem by Hafiz, and a book that I remember I was reading when we were at Udupi last year. And the title of the book was "The Subject Tonight is Love." And the poem basically says the subject tonight is love, and in fact, I cannot think of any other better topic to speak for the rest of eternity. So it's not just tonight. But yeah, we have then still we have to do it. And when doing it, it's wonderful to see, wow, we can be talking about quote unquote the same topic, and it's never the same. No? So having an experiential glimpse of the ever evolvingness of love, just bring the topic to conversation over and over and over and over again, and never getting tired of that. So regarding unconditional love, and again, how naturally, at least for me, it converges into what will be the next book. Though I've been talking about that in previous books, as I try to also make the case, though it's not conscious. Okay, I will write about this because in 3 books ahead I will talk about that, so there I will make a mystical connection saying that I happen to be writing about that 10 years ago. No. So from my first book, I'm talking about love being ever evolving. Second book, also talking about unconditional love. So it's all, yeah, interwoven. And of course, in one sense, Evolution in Divine Love is a book about unconditional love. Though, and I mentioned that in the book, though I try to, the main focus of the unconditionality of love in this case is that love grows beyond conditions. Right? No matter the condition, the nature of love is to grow. As we were talking yesterday here, and also I mentioned that in the book, many definitions of love in our tradition are no matter what obstacles you put in front of sacred love, it can only grow. Right? It never gets diminished when there are reasons for it to diminish, but it just continues to expand. So now again, as you mentioned, that's I don't know if the irony of it, but the paradox of it. Okay, this love is ever evolving, ever growing. In one sense, is the most available thing because it's everywhere in constant expansion. So you cannot think of something being more present than that, of a gift more available. Yet, it makes me think of this second verse of Shikshastakan, right? With Mahaprabhu say, your name are unlimited names, all your grace is there, no rules and hard and fast rules. So much grace is pouring from that, yet it's hard. I don't have taste for that. I cannot, so in similar way, okay, unconditional love is the most available and expansive of all gifts, of all realities, yet it seems to be the hardest thing to find. And yet, once found, it still feels one of the hardest things to extend to others. which may make us question how much I found it to begin with, right? If I actually receive the gift of unconditional love, if I've opened myself to that, ideally proportionately to my openness to that should be my capacity to extend that, to pass that gift on to others. Because if I say I have fully embraced and received unconditional love 108%, but I really can only pass it on to others on a 3%. It's like how much you received it to begin with. And again, this is not to enter into any toxic shame trip. Like it's so available, it's more available than anything, and yet you are not taking it. No, it's not to go there, but to humbly be humbled by acknowledging the availability of the gift, and second, acknowledging our, so to say, our lack of training in knowing how to receive that. So it requires some training to first of all accept a reality that may sound too good to be true to begin with, because we all come with our wounds, with our fears, with our defense mechanisms, with our lack of experience of unconditional love. So we cannot probably suddenly make ourselves fully available to that reality and give it a full embrace. It's too much for our current system. So there's a gradual shift in, and we may call this, define sadhana bhakti or practice as that, as gradually train myself in trust, in confidence, in faith, to make myself more available to the availability of unconditional love. No, it's not so much that I practice so unconditional love becomes more available to me, but I practice so I become more available to unconditional love. Because unconditional love is unconditional. Unconditional means doesn't matter the condition, it's already there. I'm not unconditional to love's unconditionality. So that's why I'm not so present yet, and I'm not perceiving that. So again, not to feel terribly bad about ourselves, just to acknowledge, okay, I need to train for this. I need to train to show up to love's unconditionality, to become more available to that which is super available in such a way that I can even conceive. So, and that's difficult. Again, that's when we have to embrace patience and self-acceptance in still in those days when we may fail to fully grasp the gift in front of us, and not fall into, not spiral down into toxic shame and guilt, because that's the thing, the paradox with unconditional love is so available, is so generous, is so everything, that when we are not able to honor that, we can feel bad about it, because wow, it's so available, it's so big, it's so great, and yet it's easy to go to the and yet and bring the whip, start the whipping festival. But the very fact that even when we are picking the whip, unconditional love still remains there, unconditional, then that helps us to let go of the whip. I pick the whip and I'm about to start the whipping festival, and I look and I realize, oh, unconditional love has never left me, because it's unconditional. And even when I'm whipping myself, hopefully not, but if it happens, and I happen to look in the direction of unconditional, oh, it's still there, even in my whipping chapter. So that helps me to let the whip go and realize, and keep watching in the direction of unconditional love, right? So again, it has its price, it has its complexity, it has its own paradox. It's easy to feel bad exactly because it's so available and we are not yet properly honoring it. But it's very, very unconditional presence, I think, is the medicine, is the cure to to those moments when we feel bad about ourselves, and we can how to regain hope and strength to continue to pursue such a reality is by the very unconditionality of love, right? So and it's a, how to say, test and trail and how's in English, that you try and may fail and try
Trial and
again.
error.
Yeah, trial and error. But it's part of the learning curve and the humbleness that comes from witnessing that process. So it's available. It's available. And if we are honest and sincere, and we want to make ourselves available, we will show up in moments of prayer and moments of inner contemplation, and we will find it's there, or in our relationships with people we trust, and there is unconditionality as much as we are able to offer. And we will, if we open ourselves to that, we will realize no, it's always available. So then it comes the process of how to show up for that, how to receive before thinking about giving again. Sometimes we go too quick to the giving part, and we are not so expert at receiving. So that means that our giving also is not that substantial. So first I have to make myself available for a comprehensive receiving, not in a selfish way, but because I want to give so badly, so to say, first I need to make myself available for fully receiving. And the receiving of unconditional love, the witnessing of the presence of that substance, so to say, is totally humbling, and is absolutely dismantling gradually the false ego, the false self. So that's also why we may be scared to show up. Because what unconditional love mirrors back to us is, it's basically a disarming of all our false narratives that I need to be like this, to be loved, to be yearned, to be accepted, to be someone. So many of who we think we are, many of those notions start to be disarmed, dismantled in the presence of unconditional love. So unconsciously, we may be terrified about that, and we may have difficulty in showing up. But gradually, we have to internalize this conviction that no, that's what I need, and my real self will emerge from that, the contact with that fire. So there's nothing to lose, it's all to win. My future is brilliant. Gradually, we gain confidence, we grow in faith, and therefore that grown faith allows us to show up more frequently, so to say, to unconditional love, and fear it less and less, till at one point it's like, I want to live in the presence of this reality without interruption. So the more we do that, proportionately to our showing up and openness, we can extend the gift to others, right? So, yeah.
Wow.
So gradual alchemical process of being carved into the fire of that presence, yeah.
Wow, that feels hopeful. And I really love how you connected that to the process, to the second verse of Shikshashtakam, that there is unconditional love, but we are not ready. And I think, I thought that was brilliant. And also that, the book itself coming in all the, all the knowledge, everything that we've been learning here in this regard, unconditional love is also a form of unconditional love that is coming to us when we are in the process of whipping ourselves for not having taste for chanting, not being able to receive and give love mostly. Also not thinking that we need to receive first. Somehow we have this idea that if we focus on receiving, then that is like selfish, so, but like you often also say that it all begins at home, kind of you start.
Yeah, and depends. So it all depends on what we are focusing on in receiving. Of course, sometimes a focus on receiving is more of taking stuff selfishly. But the thing is that if you open yourself to receive unconditional love, that by nature, by definition, that cannot make you selfish. And that will dismantle all your selfishness. So you are receiving something that is dismantling your selfishness. So what's wrong with that receiving, right? So the actual problem with receiving is receiving from a separatistic, exploitative way, from a way that, I don't know, you see yourself at the center of reality, everything else is connected, everything else revolving around you, blah, blah, blah. But when you really open to receive unconditional love, that's not going to happen. If you are open to the actual experience will be diametrically opposed. It will dismantle the false self. It will put us in contact with who we actually are, with what everything is, and it will show reality as it is. So there's no problem at all with receiving that. And again, we are receiving that. It's being extended to us without interruption. So, and the more we grow, the more open we become to receiving that without interruption. So in one sense, our ideal prospect is to remain open to receiving unconditional love without interruption. So there must be something good about receiving, because we want to be receiving that forever. So it's not that there's a point where you only give unconditional love and no longer receive. No, the more you give, the more you receive. So also, it's always coming. And it's not like, okay, now I shift to giving unconditional love and I stop receiving. No, that's not the case. No, because it's unconditional. So it's always being given. No. The fact I choose to show up for it or not, I choose to extend that to others or not. But unconditional love continues to give itself. It cannot help but but do that. So yeah, I also appreciate the idea, the sharing of this second verse of Shikshastakam. It came, Mahaprabhu was great. And the first three lines of that verse are all about how much the gift that we import. And the last line is, okay, my difficulty with dealing with that. So also the proportions, 3 lines versus 1 line, it speaks about how much is being given. Yes, still I have some difficulty and I acknowledge that, but still so much blessing, so much grace coming. So acknowledging that, and in that context, okay, I can lament, I can acknowledge my lack of capacity, but while being very grateful for what's coming on my way. First gratitude. That's a virtue that sometimes we how to say, we don't stay enough time with. And we go quickly to the last line of the verse, and I don't have a track to stop. Don't go there yet. Be grateful enough. Become soaked in gratitude, and then deal with the negative, so to say. Start with the yes, then bring the no into the picture. Right? Start with the Om. Start with the first 3 lines, second verse of Shikshastakam, gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. And then you can acknowledge your shortcomings in honoring the gift, but the gift's still there. So there's always reasons to celebrate and to have hope, as you say. Yeah. But Tirasa, what about you? Your journey with evolution, divine love, some of your main pounded posts related to the foundation of the work. I don't know. We also want to give your own journey.
Yeah, I'm grateful that I can say, yes, I've had a journey, just to begin with that. And I'd say you mentioned also about confidence. So that's one thing that I've noticed in myself is a level of confidence in the fact that God is love, and love is the fabric of existence. And I used to hear Srila Sridhar Maharaj's statement that the environment is friendly. And I can remember like distinct feelings of resistance towards that. I didn't experience the environment as friendly, whether internally or externally. But through the journey, that's not the case. I can actually embrace and see that the environment is friendly. And I think that really rests upon the perspective that there's nothing but love and everything is moving toward love. It helps me reframe things like suffering and agency and surrender, all of those things we might that I had like a negative approach toward. So from your books, not just this one, but Radical Personalism also, and Inherent or Inherited, just the relationality of everything, how the sambandha, how everything is just woven together in such a way that even if there's like a loose thread somewhere, in the tapestry, if there's a loose thread, something that's not that, if I tug on it, then the weaving just becomes tighter. The picture just becomes actually clearer. It doesn't leave me with holes in the tapestry. So I that's what I find in hearing your classes and reading your book is such a solid weaving of sambandha, how everything is related, how everything belongs, where I fit into that picture, where I fit in with each other, how we all fit into that picture, where nature is. I mean, it's it's again wholly shifts in my perspective of the center of reality and where I am in relation to that. So I'd say a lot of confidence has been built and trust in the unfolding of the present moment, of the future. There's nothing really to be concerned about in a fearful way. I've been gifted with trust that God actually is love, and love is the engine of all being. And not saying that happened, that I live in those moments all the time, but I can say that again, when the threads are there and something might be starting to unravel, when I revisit the tapestry, then everything becomes okay. All that, like you said, the uncertainties become insignificant, really, in the face of what is certain. So that's the gifts that I have received from Evolution and Divine Love.
Okay. Merry Christmas. Those have been Christmas gifts. This will be published by that time, I think so. Thank you. Thank you for giving us the gifts of the appreciation of the gifts you've received. And I was thinking as you started with hope and with this quote of Srila Siddhar Maharaj that in the beginning didn't hit home that much, the environment is friendly, and probably now another quote of him makes even more sense when he will say, like, your future is brilliant, which is another way of saying the environment is friendly, basically. Your future is brilliant because the environment is friendly. But again, if you hear that at certain times, almost like, no, my future is not brilliant because the environment is not friendly, and so on. So yeah, it's, again, many of us may feel like that still, though we know, hopefully we know more clearly now that that's not the case. There is friendliness and brilliance around us, inside us, in every direction. But yeah, we need I appreciate your expression, and I'm not owning that, like putting my name below that, but a solid weaving of Sambandha. And I'm not saying I did it, but that's what sincerely I tried to do. I really, I don't know why, probably because for the many years that I lived in Argentina, in the ashram there, also our main deity at the time was Gauranga Radha Madan Mohan, and Madan Mohan is, in one sense, the deity of Sambandha, established how it's established in our tradition. So there has been always some kind of obsession with Sambandha, like obsession, and also healthy emphasis from various teachers that I had, like in terms of, if you don't have Sambandha in place, I mean, Avideya and Prayojan will unfold accordingly. So it all depends on Sambandha. Sambandha ultimately is synonymous with Prayojan, because whatever you lay as a foundation of proper conceptual orientation and understanding, that will lead you to live and practice in a certain way and to obtain a particular result of that. But it all begins with what is what, as simple as that sounds. So, and it's interesting you say solid weaving of Sambandha, but because the very word Sambandha implies weaving, right? Sambandha, everything is bonded or woven, if we want to use that word, with everything else. Huh? But we have to present the weaving of the interwovenness of everything, also to show how that's actually happening, and that takes time. It's not just like a few minutes, one liner, one book, one lifetime. But I feel it's so fundamental, and once that's in place, because sometimes I've seen how practitioners, whether in the Gaudiya tradition or other schools, become I don't know if excessively, but sometimes excessively concerned with the practice and how to practice and the goal and how to attain the goal, rather than properly concentrating on Sambandha, how to get proper Sambandha, and understand that when you have that, everything else basically follows organically. When you know that everything is interrelated and interconnected and interwoven with love being the in-between glue, and in which ways that happens, and taking time to unpack all that, naturally you end up in a place of gratitude and awe and positiveness and willingness to explore. So that takes you to practice and live in certain way, naturally. So Sambandha naturally like drags you to Avideya, no? To the practice, to life as practice, to practice as life. Sambandha naturally takes you to live in a certain way. And that practice embraced from such a place naturally drags you to a certain result. It's not that you need to think about it separately, but sometimes I think we became overtly concerned. Now that's coming now, like how to practice, how to chant, how to do this, how to do that, and what's the goal, how to attain the goal, when it will happen, where are the details of the goal. And I'm not against any of that, but sometimes we ask that too much, and we don't ask enough the questions that we should ask in terms of Sambandha. And we don't spend enough time being exposed to understanding what is the nature of God, what is the nature of love, what is the nature of the soul, what is the nature of matter. And there is so much to say about that. It's not just Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead, we are spiritual souls, matter is temporary, love is the goal of life. Let's go to Avideya now. It's like, oh, yeah, I don't think so yet. Right? So yeah, just I was reflecting about the fundamental importance, at least for me, of Sambandhas lately. Building blocks, again, foundation of the building. Now, then you can start the building, the actual building. Then you can eventually appreciate the building, enter into the building, live into the building, into the temple. But first, you have to put the foundation in place. Some people are thinking, how will I live inside the temple? how this will look like, but the foundation is not even put. So it's meaningless.
Yeah, I'm kind of stuck on the example of like a fabric of a tapestry, and like if we don't have a good sambandha, if it's not tight, then the weaving is loose, and we can fall between the threads and
Yeah.
kind of lose our way. But if it's tight and strong, then it's actually can be like even like a trampoline. So
It can
sometimes,
hold space.
yes, yeah, and
Safe vessel.
what's that?
It's a safe vessel. It can hold space.
Exactly. Yeah, it can be like a container without a bunch of leaky holes. And
Yeah.
and we might focus on, oh well, what can I do with this tapestry? Like I can use it as a blanket, use it as this. What can I do with it without actually focusing on the weaving of it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it takes time. Again, it's kind of a discipline to have proper sambandha. It takes time. And there is the theory of the sambandha, so to say, the information, the concepts, but then is the the rumination of the sambandha, which in itself is already is a type of practice, already is a type of avideya. What do you do with the sambandha is basically avideya. No? What do you do with that is avideya. And then comes the result, the prayojan, which is the fruit of what you have done with what you have received. So
So carrying that forward, I'm wondering what you would see as what would come from this strong foundation of Sambandha. What do you see would manifest in practitioners who have this in place?
well, you already gave your testimony, Bhaktarasa. Confidence, right? For example, you feel this safety, this strengthened faith in trusting reality, in knowing that reality is founded on love, that God is not against us, angry with us. There's no like conspiracy against us, that the environment is friendly. I mean, you can live a quite healthy life, let's put it that way. You can practice and live from a way more robustly healthy perspective rather than fear-based, doubt-based, doubt in a negative way. There's no problem with doubt itself as long as it comes from a place of, again, trust and confidence. So you can give so much gratitude, so much awe, wonder, trust, confidence, and again, proper sambandha allows us to understand, which is the basic point, but basic means also foundational. That is that when you receive proper sambandha, you really ruminate on that and allow the time to internalize. This is my practice and my life. Are not separate. So whatever I do with my life is one. It's part of the journey. It's not separate. So that in itself is a huge gift to get there and to live from that place. No, I don't have this divided life, so to say. This like bipolar, this fragmented way of approaching things. It becomes more and more, again, unified, more and more coherent, more and more woven, as you say. Everything becomes woven in more and more robust way. So it's holds the vessel becomes more and more strong, more and more strong. So we can hold and honor what's coming. Sometimes in our tradition we have this example that they say, if I'm not wrong, it's an analogy. I don't know how much that can be scientifically proved, but I think they say that I may be wrong with the analogy, but it's something like that, like this. You may please correct me if I'm wrong. But something like, okay, if you are milking a cow you can use like a normal bucket to receive the milk. But if you are milking a lioness, the milk of the lion, and maybe again it's some mythological, something more analogy, but it's too powerful, and you need to receive with a golden vessel, because if not, it breaks all the vessels. Probably it's not happening like that. And probably you won't dare to try to milk a lioness. It's not to prove the point, right? So those who are watching this episode, don't do it at home, right? Get the point. We don't want any tragedies as a result of the conclusion episode of this podcast. But the point is, the idea will be like the milk of the lioness, for whatever reason, is way more thicker and powerful and condensed, and a normal vessel will be broken, because there has to be something stronger to hold the power of that substance. So in the same way, we are talking about love, unconditional love, something very powerful. Haitukiya pratihata. It's its own cause, it's the cause of everything, it's uninterrupted, it's not possible to be contained. It's like so powerful current. So we need to build a vessel in our heart. No, Gaudiya Vaishnava will use the word kripa patra, no, like a mercy vessel, or a vessel that may be made by grace, but also in order to honor the grace that is coming, which is pretty powerful. And we don't want leakings, we don't want holes in the vessel. So we still may have, and that's why we cannot still properly honor that. The weaving, whatever analogy you want to use, the weaving, the strengthening in alchemical fire to strengthen the vessel. So for me, Sambandha, my point is Sambandha is crucial to put again the vessel into the fire another time, to tighten the weaving, whatever the analogy we use to properly receive and honor and serve back, no, love, no? Serve back the love that is coming. So yeah, there's and even again, we are receiving Sambandha, we are ruminating, internalizing. It doesn't mean that then I'm practicing and there's no longer need to receive more Sambandha, right? Okay, now I pass from Sambandha to Avideya, goodbye Sambandha, now Avideya, and then comes Prayojana. No, it's constantly reinforcing itself, right? So in one sense, you cannot separate these three also, but it all begins with Sambandha. No? It doesn't begin with Prayojana. It doesn't begin with Avideya. No? It begins with some particular notions that somehow fascinate us enough to stop for a moment and consider, oh, maybe I will try this. No, to practice this, to live my life in this way, bhakti. But it all begins with some notions that hopefully are fascinating enough, no, not intimidating enough, and that's why I'm practicing. Remember, this should be the path of fascination. So it will be fascinating all the way through Sambandha, Videya, and Prayojana. So Sambandha is fascinating. Just the notion of Sambandha, everything is interconnected. That in itself is fascinating. You just sit with that idea. I'm interconnected with everything. Everything is interrelated. There's only one family. There's a common center. Nothing exists in isolation, etc., etc. Just staying with the literal meaning of the word Sambandha, not playing out the implications of all that it means, just what the word means. That in itself brings fascination. So it should be fascination all the way through, starting from there. Yeah.
Wow. I really like how you connected Sambandha and the vessel to receive love and grace. I think that's amazing. Talking about Sambandha, like one of the things that I really appreciate in this book and also the radical personalism is you writing about material nature, like a relationship with material energy. And as we were concluding with the last chapter, which was material nature, matter matters, it occurred to me that like that somehow is our starting point, you know. I mean, you do say that, but it was one of those like aha moments for me, like, wow, like, you know, that's what we have and we can't bypass that, like, you know. But then somehow, like, you know, we've always been given this idea that material energy is bad. And, you know, like even Srila Prabhupada used statements like, um, we make the best of bad bargain, kind of implying that, like, you know, what we have is not great. So, you know, like, yeah, I mean, would you like to say something, you know, in regards to how we can actually understand this is so necessary to start our journey there because this is what we have?
Mm. Yeah, matter ki jai. So, as you say, and I say that a few times, like in one way I could, or maybe I should, have started the book with matter, because for many people it's the most immediate reality and experience. So how to, and as I try to mention in the book, uh, scriptures in our tradition, like the Srimad Bhagavatam, they begin with that. No, Sukadeva Goswami starts describing Virat Rupa, the universal forms. He learned to see the world in connection to God, and then other topics. So there is a clear sequence of, okay, let's yeah, let's, how to say, Mhm. Let's first heal our connection with the immediate, right? And let's start discovering God and love in the immediate, in what we can perceive as immediate, instead of forcing ourselves to perceive something beyond the immediate that we cannot perceive it by force, right? It's not like if I tell you, okay, perceive transcendence now. Oh, it's like I'm not there. They say, okay, perceive matter. Oh yeah, I'm there. Okay, so let's work on that first. So in that sense, yeah, I could have started the book there, but also I think just now I'm thinking, as you were asking the question, maybe unconsciously, intuitively, I felt, okay, in both books, of course, the chapter on matter is the last chapter, both radical personalism and now this one. So maybe the reason, unconscious reason for me to conclude on that, because yeah, it was not something I will put this at the end, but it could have been to like create enough momentum with other themes. I mean, there are different ways that I can explain it. Of course, I started with love because for me love is the foundation of everything, then God, soul, and matter, but not in a way to say, okay, matter is the last thing, the less important, the worst, so we leave it for the end. Save the best for the end, you could say. But also, yeah, like creating some momentum with other topics and other ideas. So we can, when we get to matter, we have already been like soaked in other ideas, other sambandhas. So now we're hearing about matter as in a very new way for some. It makes sense easily. No? Maybe if I start with matter as sacred and divine, if someone is carrying a very different narrative, it may be too shocking to start with something so opposite to that, and it may be more difficult to accept it. But if we start, okay, love, sacred, yeah, of course, love is sacred, ever evolving, yes, and God, divine, yes. So we more agree, we tend to agree more with that. And gradually, okay, we also, okay, sometimes we have difficulty with seeing ourselves as amazing, but hopefully some case was built before reaching the soul for us to be able to accept. And then, okay, let's go to matter now. Matter, also matter is included in the amazing list. Yeah. So there already has been some momentum built. So when we get to matter, okay, yeah, it makes sense. Okay. So I'm thinking now that probably that's why it came like at the high point of the book, at the climax, at the conclusion. And many times when you read the book, of course, let's be honest, it's not that one reads the book and one retains everything one read from the book. So probably one's the thing that may stay more with us is the last thing that we read also. Like the most recent reading is like so somehow that's another reason. So regarding your question, again, and we have talked about this many times, and we need to talk about this many more times. It's totally fine. And actually yesterday, I think in the mornings, in our mornings lecture here, the same topic came. So again, it's very current, and it came from people who have been reading my book. So it's necessary to talk about it over and over again. It's fine. So okay, we have this idea of matter as sacred, material world as not an obstacle, as coming as an outpouring of divine love and all this wonderful sambandha, or this wonderful orientation to matter. But then on the other side, we have some statements that seem to downplay, despise, do away with the world of matter. So what to do with that? Maybe, hopefully the question is more trying to understand why those negative remarks were done, and not so much to think, oh, actually those remarks prove that matter is unsacred. No, hopefully we already had enough exposure to the sacredness of matter, to the sambandha that at least I tried to provide in the book, that it becomes clear that this is sacred. So the actual doubt now is why it has been said otherwise at times. You follow my point? Maybe in another type of the journey, we were sure that matter was not sacred, and the doubt was like, why here it says that it's amazing? How do I solve that doubt so I actually reinforce the idea that it's not sacred? So hopefully now there is some holy shift, and we are pretty clear, because scriptures, there's abundance of evidence, and I've tried to compile it as much as I could, that this is sacred, guys. Okay, so then the actual question is how to understand what some statements seem to indicate something otherwise, the opposite or whatever. And briefly, I also addressed that in the book, in the sense of explaining, because again, it's not just some contemporary teachers at times saying things like that. Krishna in the Gita says, Dukkalayama Sashvatam, right? The material world it's miserable and temporary. It's like, whoa, that's intense. But again, we have to then analyze what's the material world, right? What do we mean by material world? Do we mean the actual matter? Because as we over and over again say, then God is in every atom. God is in the space between every atom. That's Brahma Samhita is saying. Krishna is fully present in all the atomic, subatomic particles, all the space in between. How can that not be sacred? So again, if we take material world like the planet Earth, the particles of matter, that's an abode of misery and temporary, but the source of all bliss and the eternal one is there. so that cannot be unsacred. So what do we mean by the material world? And the only possible conclusion to make sense of everything that is being said, to reconcile everything, is that material world means it's a state of consciousness. No, it's a covert state of consciousness in ignorance, when we live a life that is fragmented, isolated, illusory, impossible, exploitative, selfish. That is an abode of misery. That's not eternal. That cannot be eternal, thank God. That's not permanent. That cannot be permanent. Though we may try hard to make it permanent and even eternal, it's not possible. As the spiritual world is a state of consciousness, the material world is a state of consciousness. So sometimes certain teachers or section of scripture may use or employ certain language with teaching purposes. No? Like, for example, and that's the example that came yesterday, or maybe it was 2 days ago, the analogy of the knife came. Like, let's say that there's a knife on the table, and we adults, hopefully, we see a knife, And it's not, we don't see danger in the knife. We see the purpose of the knife, and we use it accordingly, which is not to kill people, not to harm ourselves, but to cut potatoes and to prepare a meal, or to whatever, to cut a rope that you may need to use for something, and so on. There are multiple purposes in a healthy way, none of them harmful, but facilitating nourishment like a food or whatever. So you see the knife and you see a whole bunch of positive potential. Now, a 2-year-old boy sees a knife, and he doesn't even know it's a knife. He doesn't even know it cuts. And he may grab the knife and harm himself. So the mother is seeing the 2-year-old boy coming to the knife, and the mother will shout, "Don't touch the knife." So for the boy, that will be, oh, the knife is bad, something's wrong with the knife. But the problem is, no, you don't know how to deal with the knife. You don't have enough sambandha to properly engage with the knife in a facilitative way. So we will say in the same way that we will find statements from teachers or in scripture about like, don't deal with the world, or the world is bad, or the world is miserable, and this or that, the body, that. It's not that because the world is bad, because the body is, but just because we don't know how to deal with that, and we may need to remain for the time being at some distance from that particular thing, because we are accustomed to deal with that in a very wrong way, in a very exploitative way. So it's not that the world is bad, but our approach to the world is so bad that we may need to be, I don't know what's the word in English, inoculated or something. Like we need to be like, no, now you go here. No, separation. And maybe the tactic for that may not be so much your approach to the world is bad, because we are so convinced of it that we won't accept that, but we are still engaging with the world in a very exploitative way. So maybe it's like, no, the world is bad, don't go there. Okay. And in that distance, you will be taught gradually that actually the world is not bad, and that your approach to the world was bad. But it may take time for us to believe that narrative. So for that, we may need a period of distancing from these two things, because it's not the world is a danger to us, but we are a danger to the world. That's why people is put in prison, so to say. Hopefully, ideally, for them to be healed and be back into society as wholesome citizens. That's not always the case, unfortunately, but if you are actually an unhealthy unit in society, okay, poop, be here. No? Of course, in that case, the message is different, because a prisoner won't be told society is bad, that's why we were putting you into prison, right? but for a child, for someone with childlike mentality, again, and we are all we all have gone through kindergarten chapters in spirituality. We may not be able initially to understand my approach to the world is very self-centered, very wrong. So they will tell, no, that's wrong. Get out of there, take a distance. And in that safe distance, we will be properly educated to return in a way that we are not a public danger, basically.
And in your explanation of material nature as the knife, we can also, as you bring out in Evolution and Divine Love, that nature can reveal God's presence. So as we approach the knife, we can study the knife and the way it was made, the way it was carved, and actually learn about who made that knife. So not just learning about how to use the knife properly or in a helpful way to facilitate things, but actually let's use it to learn about the creator.
Where is the knife coming from? Yeah, and learning where is the knife coming from probably will shed light of what's the purpose of the knife. So again, it's kind of sambandha navideya, right? Like, what is this? Where is this coming from? And therefore, what I'm supposed to do with this, how I'm supposed to engage with it. And then the fruit is of all that is I will have a great meal having been cut by that knife. But first, we may need to understand where is it coming from. But all that may need to to happen in a safe space with someone who can instruct us about it. For our own side, if I go as a 2-year-old boy to the knife with all good intention, trying to explore the knife, I may end up cutting myself totally, and I may not get a clue where is the knife coming from, what's the purpose, the ideal fruit. So that's why sometimes these safe chambers are created with some distance in between for art to properly study and then, okay, go back to it. Yeah.
I'm really loving your analogies and examples to to connect like Sambandha, Abhidheya, and Prayojan. It's like, understanding that better, and also how important it is to form a proper Sambandha.
Yeah. Yeah, analogies are helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Well,
it seems like, sorry, yeah, I was just going to say that, yeah, with matter, like you said, like toward the end, I think concluding lines you were saying about like correcting or like, fixing a relationship with Mother Earth, like with the mother, like it seems like that's really where we start our journey home, by starting healing that relationship.
mm, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's very healthy to again personalize our relationships basically, because of course it doesn't make sense to speak about an impersonal or a depersonalized relationship. Doesn't sound much of a relationship to begin with. So to think of nature, of matter as mother, mother nature, mother earth, mother matter, uh, it can help us again. It's not like an imagination, it's real, but we need to bring that particular approach into relationality. So it's relational. Again, it's not just a concept out there, matter. It's a reality to relate to in a radically personal way. And not just any relationship, it's a mother, right? Which is of course a very classical, ancient, powerful symbol of nourishment, of being a source of what comes through the womb of the mother. We've been part of that in a way. So there is a deep connection, deep relationship with our mother, right? It's in one sense, it's our source relationship. So if we are not healthy in our source relationships, I mean, even talking on a human psychological perspective, you don't have a functional relationship with your source, biologically speaking, with your mom, that may get in the way of all of your other relationships. So in the same way, extend that to the bigger mom, to Mother Earth, to Mother Nature. If we don't have a healthy connection with her, that will probably get in the way of everything. And again, the healthy connection starts with healthy sambandha. And that's why it's interesting for me in connection to it, because sambandha, literally, as we all know, probably by this point, means everything is interconnected. But generally, the word sambandha is translated as relationship, like implying the moment you become aware that everything is interconnected, it sets the stage for relationship. Like it invites to engage in that relationship with everything. Everything is worthy of relationship because everything is bonded with everything else. So everything is in relationship, therefore everything is to be treated in relationship. And you cannot have a depersonalized relationship. So you ultimately, everything invites for radical personalism. And now we're going back to radical personalism. We need to the radical personalist podcast, but we already have the free radical podcast, so we already did that. We covered that base. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if there is for you a question that has arisen from evolution and divine love that will lead you on your next quest. Is there something that's come from your writing, from your speaking, from your listening that has further drawn you forward in a new quest?
What about you, Bhaktirasa? I'm also a podcast host, so I like to shift turns for a moment.
Well, I'd say for myself, I would like to pursue a deepening of what I gathered from evolution and divine love. That I don't want. I'm not looking for something new or different. I'm simply looking for a deeper understanding and a deeper practice.
What about Swetadev Radhika?
Sambandha. You spoke so much about Sambandha today. Yeah, I think specifically like my relationship with matter. Just like, realizing how I have bypassed that in the past, thinking like, it's like all transcendental, like, we need to escape being here and like, run away somewhere and all of that. And just like, realizing that's not the case. And I think my relationship with matter, I'm already noticing that evolving and how much it has evolved, and that prospect is exciting. So, that's what I see at the moment. At least that's fresh, and I see deepening. But of course, there's so many things like this book. It's like one of the things reading conclusion that came to mind is, I mean, so much is given. I probably understood such a small percentage of what you have shared there. But yeah, even the small drop is a lot. And it's already like brought so many changes. Like we are like such different people already compared to who we were when starting the podcast even a few months ago. So much has happened. So yeah, so many shifts, but this is the one that's fresh at the moment. Yeah. Thank you. I'm feeling a lot of gratitude. And that's also been one of the messages recently, and even with today's discussion, to remember to be grateful for the gifts we receive, we continue to receive. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you. So as for me, of course, I may repeat myself regarding some of the things you said, because it's natural and unavoidable to go there. First thing that came to my mind was, these days especially, I'm giving still some lectures during my visit to New Zealand, where I am now when we are recording this episode. And I'm speaking about topics of the book, and generally I do not read from my book during the lectures. I don't know, I'm not so much inclined toward reading during lecture, but just speaking. Sometimes I may read something, but I may read something before the speaking, just to, okay, let's go here, there. And I was reading some sections and I felt like, again, and hopefully this doesn't sound narcissistic. And I was like, wow, that's great. Like I say sometimes, like I'm giving a lecture, sometimes that something comes and I'm like, wow, that was pretty cool. But that was not me. No, I was not thinking about saying that. That came through me. I won't deny that, but it's not my property. I cannot claim copyrights. Though I have to somehow put my name in the cover of the book, but somehow it feels unfair because there's so much other influence and inspiration, and all there deserve to be named. And that's what I try to do in the acknowledgement section. Thank God there is an acknowledgement section in the book. But my point is, after going through the book these days, before some lectures, I felt like, oh, probably I will read the book. I will read my own book. Again, my quote unquote. From that place, I can read it. It's not like I will relish my own creation and I'm so incredible, but just being humbled in bearing witness to what happened through me and others by the inspiration of so many, and I'm not taking for granted already I wrote this book, so no need, that's left behind. Let's go to the next one. Or we already did this series of podcasts. Okay, whomever watch them. Okay, let's go to the next one. Oh, you can always revisit the things, not to kind of sound like I'm promoting rereading, rehearing anything, but just the nature of the topic is that's eternally revisitable, right? Like with every book, I know Bhagavad Gita, I read Bhagavad Gita, I don't know how many times, I've lost count, I'm reading it again now. So, and it's always new, and so many things are coming. So it's not like I already read Bhagavad Gita, what's next? I mean, I already read Srimad Bhagavatam, what's next? Read it again, read it again. That's the conclusion of all these books. At the end, it's like, wow, go back again. So just saying this because sometimes we have this tendency of, okay, checking boxes, right? So I read the book, I watched the podcast, what's the next one? And hopefully there's always a next one, but if this happens not to be a next one, or even if it's a next one, we may feel the need, like, I'll need to go through this again. And again, I'm not saying that this even for the reader of the book or the listener of the podcast, I'm saying this for the author, for me, for myself, for everyone. I'm not talking about only, again, regarding my own book, but so many of these things that we need to recontemplate over and over again. And as you say, Bhaktirasa, in one sense, the book is concepts, information. Of course, hopefully there is some living realization behind it, but still, there's no limit to how much we can internalize, incorporate, realize the thing. So I feel personally that's what's next forever. Because again, especially with the book talking about the ever-evolvingness of everything, you are trapped with that, so to say. You cannot say, I'm done with ever-evolvingness. That's an oxymoron. That makes no sense. So in one sense, I could stop here and not write any other book anymore, because that's like, there you have it, ever-evolving. So now you just keep... Anyhow, I may continue writing more stuff in that spirit. Okay, it's ever evolving. We can never say enough. And in one sense, the next book also has been, that is almost already written, actually. Let's see when it's published. But the point is, for me, it has been like a natural continuation after I finished this one. It was interesting because, as some of you may know, I finished writing this book almost like a year ago, or even a little bit more. And somehow I think probably after writing a whole book about things being ever evolving, I was in such momentum that I wrote another book right after that. Like, no, there's no end to what you can say about there is another book. No? So somehow that evolution and divine love is to blame for my fourth book. Because you finish writing a whole thing about things moving and expanding and alive and ever evolving. So it's like, wow, okay, there's another. So somehow I hope the experience of reading the fourth one on the principle of unconditional love, and again, it will be, I hope it feels a natural continuation of the flow. It's one can perceive how the momentum of the previous work led to the next one in a natural way.
Looks like we won't stop talking about love.
Of course, that will, I mean, the whole book will be about that. So far, if that helps us in the form of trailer, in terms of title and subtitle, and the word love appears there again. The title may be Reversible Grace. I like that expression, and I use that in radical personalism, because generally we speak about irreversible damage, right? So let's redeem that word and speak about irreversible grace. And maybe the subtitle may be something like the sacred experience of unconditional love, M dash, and what gets in the way of it, something like that. So again, the word love is there somehow in the title. So it will continue to be another chapter in the exploration of love. And as you say, Sweta Radical, also I think it's healthy for me and for everyone, I will say, to look back, in this case, to our journey. As you say, okay, when we started this series of episodes, we were someone and so much happened in between, and sometimes it's healthy to travel to the past, not in a toxic, nostalgic way, but just to look back at, okay, where I was, who I was, how I was thinking and feeling and understanding things even a few months ago or a year ago, and where I am now. Because if we don't do, sometimes we don't take that distance for a moment, we may don't appreciate the daily transformations that happen in between. So sometimes we need to take that distance and no, like sometimes the example is given, another analogy. But if I tell you, okay, look at this, I don't know, this bamboo growing, and I will return in a week, and you tell me if the bamboo grew at all. And you have to just be looking at the bamboo. Sorry for such a torture. But 1 week, unblinking bamboo witnessing. And you do it, somehow you do it. And I return after a week, I say, so did it move? Did it grow? I say, no, nothing. Nothing. I never blinked. I was there, I'm blinking. And I had measured the bamboo before leaving, and it was whatever, half a meter. And then I measured, and it's half a meter plus whatever, 10 centimeters. So it grew like this. But we never noticed. Why? Because we were just paying attention to the day after day after day after day. But for someone who saw the like I don't know, if you visit someone once in a year and they were planting a tree and you return, it's like, wow, the tree is so big. And for them it's like, oh yeah. But they see it on a daily basis, so they take it for granted. So yeah, I appreciate the healthy exercise of visiting the past for a moment, making a conscious effort to see where we were, where we are, and to continue to see the unfolding of our journey in that same way. As much as we emphasize being the here and now in the present moment, which is great, sometimes going to the past in that mood is in the service of appreciation of the present moment is very healthy. So yeah, I can bear witness that I was also in a very different place before writing the book, before publishing the book, before starting our series of conversations, and after the 24 session churning we had, I find myself gladly in a very new, beautiful place, and I trust that the unfolding in the future will be as beautiful, if not more so. Deep gratitude to both of you for playing your own unique roles, and deep gratitude to all of the different guests that agreed to join the conversations. We don't have time now to go through all the insights and experiences we went through each one of the 24 or 20, whatever, something of them, nor to name each one of them, but deep gratitude to each one of them in a radically personal way. And of course, deep gratitude to the different viewers and listeners that joined us in the sacred journey, and excited and looking forward to the next chapter of the journey, even if it means going back to the same book and to the same episodes, if that's required. It's never the same. At this point, hopefully we got that right, at least. It seems the same, but it can never be the same. So deep
gratitude to you.
See you soon.
Thank you. Thank you for the weaving loom, Maharaj. And just as a parting gesture, I'd like to invite, if you could somehow grace us with just a parting blessing for our going forward in our next chapter.
May our next steps be blessed by presence, by openness to the unpredictability of love, but the deep certainty of love as well. And may we walk in this world, in this life, and beyond with profound trust, profound awareness of our interconnection. And in this way, may we become a blessing to others, and even a profound gift to God's own heart. Tatasthu. which is the Sanskrit for amen, which means let it be so. So deep gratitude to each one of you, and see you soon in whatever next adventure is waiting for us on the journey.